So today we're going to start on the book of Daniel. We'll do the first 6 chapters in this book, but this video will have to do with the introduction or what happens just before the book of Daniel. So it's the last major prophet books, but the major and minor prophets are not necessarily in the Bible in chronological order. And we're going to look first at the books of the Bible. And this shows you where that is in the books of the Bible. As I said, it's the last major prophet book, although the major and minor prophets are not put in chronological order. And next, I wanted to show you the timeline. We happen to be right here in about 550 years before Christ. But here's all the timeline of all the prophets. And that's the timeline of Daniel. Just in Daniel, we will see the start of the people in Babylon. And here's also a timeline in this way. He starts when Nebuchadnezzar actually comes to Judah to take people away, although we don't see that in the very first part of Daniel. And Daniel lives for over 70 years. So he just starts to see the coming back of the Jerusalem temple. So that is his span of life. And so those are the chapters we'll be doing. Okay, so I wanted to get into where we are in Jewish history, because there's so much that was involved in the Old Testament prior to Daniel that tells us about what's going to happen in Daniel. And so we really need to kind of set the scenes. The book of Daniel starts with a major event in Jewish history, which is the invasion and capture of the land of Judah by the Babylonians, led by King Nebuchadnezzar II. There are several books in the Bible that tell of this event. First, we know that God planned it due to Judah worshiping other idols instead of the one true God. Can you read the Jeremiah?
Jeremiah 25:8-11. Therefore, the Lord Almighty says this, because you have not listened to my words, I will summon all the peoples of the north and my servant Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, declares the Lord, and I will bring them against this land and its inhabitants and against all the surrounding nations. I will completely destroy them and make them an object of horror and scorn and an everlasting ruin. I will banish from them the sounds of joy and gladness, the voices of bride and bridegroom, the sound of milestones and the light of the lamp. This whole country will become a desolate wasteland, and these nations will serve the king of Babylon 70 years.
Right. So Jeremiah also predicts the invasion of Nebuchadnezzar into and taking over Judah. So we have a lot of this written out already in the Bible before it even happens. Isaiah the prophet, when he spoke to King Hezekiah, prophesied that those of royal blood taken captive would become eunuchs.
2 Kings 20:16-18. Then Isaiah to Hezekiah, hear the words of the Lord. The time will surely come when everything in your palace and all that your predecessors have stored up until this day will be carried off to Babylon. Nothing will be left, says the Lord, and some of your descendants will own flesh and blood, who will be born to you, will be taken away, and they will become eunuchs in the palace of the king of Babylon.
Yeah, eunuchs. Yeah. So even though it never says anything in Daniel, we know that Daniel never actually got married. And if he was high up and he was Jew, he's probably a eunuch, same as Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And but it's never actually said in the book of Daniel that that's what happened. But this tells us that that's what would have occurred. Then we are given the actual events that unfold. It starts with King Jehoiakim of Judah.
2 Kings 24:1-2. During Jehoiakim's reign, Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, invaded the land, and Jehoiakim became his vessel for 3 years. But then he turned against Nebuchadnezzar and rebelled. The Lord sent Babylonian Aramean and Moabite and Ammonite raiders against him to destroy Judah, in accordance with the word of the Lord proclaimed by his servants, the prophets.
Yeah, so, and we know that this happened, we know this is the time when Daniel is brought to Babylon around 605 BC.
Daniel 1:1-3. In the third year of the reign of Jehoiakim, king of Judah, Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, came to Jerusalem and besieged it. And the Lord delivered Jehoiakim, king of Judah, into his hand, along with some of the articles from the temple of God. These he carried off to the temple of his God in Babylonia, and put it in the treasure house of his God. Then the king ordered Ashpenaz, chief of his court officials, to bring into the king's service some of the Israelites from the royal family and the nobility.
Right. So we're actually, as I say, everything is unfolded in the Bible. We just don't often study this, at least Americans don't. This is not the only invasion during this time by Nebuchadnezzar against the land of Judah. Jehoiakim continued for 3 years as a vassal to the Babylonians until the failure of an invasion of Egypt in 601 BC undermined their control of the area. Jehoiakim switched allegiance back to the Egyptians. In late 598 BC, the Babylonian king Nebuchadnezzar invaded Judah and again lay siege to Jerusalem, which lasted 3 months. Jehoiakim died before the siege ended, and this is recorded in the Chronicles.
Second Chronicles 36:5-7. Jehoiakim, 25 years old when he became king, and he reigned in Jerusalem 11 years. He did evil in the eye of the Lord of the God. Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, attacked him, bound him with bronze shackles to take him to Babylon. Nebuchadnezzar also took to Babylon articles from the temple of the Lord and put them in the temple there.
The next king of Judah was Jehoiachin. He only reigned for 3 months.
2 Kings 24:8-17. Jehoiachin was 18 years old when he became king, and he reigned in Jerusalem 3 months. His mother's name was Nehushta, daughter of El. She was from Jerusalem. He did evil in the eyes of the Lord, just as his father had done. At this time, the officers of Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, advanced on Jerusalem and laid siege to it. Nebuchadnezzar himself came up to the city while his officers were besieging it. Jehoiachin, king of Judah, his mother, his attendants, his nobles, and his officials all surrendered to him. In the 8th year of the reign of the king of Babylon, he took Jehoiachin prisoner. As the Lord had declared, Nebuchadnezzar removed the treasures from the temple of the Lord and from the royal palace and cut up the gold articles that King Solomon of Israel had made for the temple of the Lord. He carried all Jerusalem into exile. All the officers, fighting men, all the skilled workers and artisans, and a total of 10,000. Only the poorest people of the land were left. Nebuchadnezzar took Jehoiachin captive to Babylon. He also took from Jerusalem to Babylon the king's mother, his wives, his officials, prominent people of the land. The king of Babylon also deported to Babylon the entire force of 7,000 fighting men, strong and fit for war, and 1,000 skilled workers and artisans. He made Mattaniah, Jehoiachin's uncle, king in his place, and changed his name to Zedekiah.
In this round of taking prisoners, 2 important people were taken. First was Kish, the great-grandfather of Esther, and Mordecai was taken with the king.
Esther 2:5-7. Now there was in the citadel of Susa a Jew of the tribe Benjamin named Mordecai, son of Jair, the son of Shimei, the son of Kish, who had been carried to exile in Jerusalem by Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon. Among those taken captive from Jehoiachin, king of Judah.
Second, The second time, Ezekiel the prophet was taken 5 years after the king.
Ezekiel 1 through 2. In my 13th year, in the 4th month, on the day, while I was among the exiles by the Kabar River, on the 5th of the month, it was the 5th year of the king of the exile of King Jehoiachin.
Right. Now, regarding King Zedekiah, he became the last king of Judah. He did evil in the sight of the Lord for 11 years, and he was finally taken down also by King Nebuchadnezzar, which then brought the third and final round of captives brought into Babylon around 586 BC.
2 Kings 25, 1 through 2. So in the 9th year of Zedekiah's reign, on the 10th day of the 10th month, Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, marched against Jerusalem with his whole army. He encamped outside the city and built siege works all around it. The city was kept under siege until the 11th year of King Zedekiah. By the 9th day of the 4th month, the famine in the city had become so severe that there was no food for the people to eat. Then the city wall was broken through, and the whole army fled at night through the gate between the two walls near the king's garden. Though the Babylonians were surrounding the city, they fled toward the Arabah, but the Babylonian army pursued the king and overtook him in the plains of Jericho. All his soldiers were separated from him and scattered, and he was captured. He was taken to the king of Babylon at Riblah, where sentence was pronounced on him. They killed the sons of Zedekiah before his eyes. They put out his eyes, bound him with bronze shackles, and took him to Babylon. On the 7th day of the 5th month, in the 19th year of Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, Nebuzaradan, commander of the imperial guard, an official of the king of Babylon, came to Jerusalem. He set fire to the temple of the Lord, the royal palace, and all the houses of Jerusalem. Every important building he burned down. The whole Babylonian army, under the commander of the imperial guard, broke down the walls around Jerusalem. Nebuzaradan, the commander of the guard, carried into exile the people who remained in the city, along with the rest of the populace and those who had deserted to the king of Babylon. But the commander left behind some of the poorest people of the land to work the vineyards and fields.
This exile will last 70 years, as predicted by Jeremiah.
Jeremiah 25:11. This whole country will become a desolate wasteland, and these nations will serve the king of Babylon 70 years.
Then in the books of Ezra and Nehemiah, the Jews returned to their homeland and rebuilt the temple, the city, and the walls of Jerusalem. In this period of restoration, the prophets Zechariah and Haggai write their letters of encouragement to the Jews who have returned. The story of Esther is also in this time frame and happens after the first part of Ezra. So that's our history, mostly before Daniel, and then the last paragraph here is going to happen after the 70 years. But Daniel is still alive at the very end. He gets to see this start happen. So technically, Daniel may be alive when the book of Ezra starts, but we never really have that connection. Just timeline wise, we seem to see that it's possible. So anyway, I'm going to stop this Zoom here and we're going to go to the next Zoom.
Okay.